Welcome back, everyone. So look, there's been a couple of questions been sent to us, and one of those questions is about healing power in the spiritual world for Aboriginal people. Well, Eve's going to kindly just talk a little bit about how spirituality and healing work together.
That's a big question, a huge topic. Where do I start? So when I think of connecting and with, these words healing and spirituality, and how we can sort of unpack that through Aboriginal culture, it's really, such a personal thing. And it's definitely something that's done through experience. And so for me, just that simple act of taking your shoes off and placing your bare feet on the earth can introduce you to that in itself. And just having that, direct connection without having like rubber on the soles of your feet, being actually able to draw energy up from the earth through your feet to help ground you and really connect you with that place is such a simple thing that we can do, but so powerful, and effective. And you guys would all know that when you've spent perhaps the day at the beach and you've been, deeply cleansed by that ocean, and you've had the sun kissing your skin, and that walk home that you have, that feeling that you get after that time that you spend on country, is also a really simple way. But if we want to take it and look at it a little deeper, coming from, I guess for me, having done my spiritual journey through, firstly, when I was 17, doing a Vipassana meditation course, which for 10 days you go and you don't talk to anyone, and you meditate like hours and hours a day, and all of the things come up. And then to discover later on the word Didgeridoo from the Dali River through Miriam Rose, and that word in itself, and that deep listening and that deep contemplation and that meditative state that, in our modern day world, we talk, we dissect everything, we intellectualize everything, and we take ourselves away from the feeling, and from that experience of each moment and what that can offer you, and by gaining full awareness of that moment in the completeness of what it is a space that we would be in. We would be in that place so much more often than maybe if you do have a meditation practice and you give yourself 20 minutes a day to do that. If you could look at that and see, when we really lived off the land, and how that state that we would be in would be, throughout the whole of our day. Just talking in itself takes away from being able to connect with that spirituality. So when I then studied yoga, and we look at that word yoga, which means to yoke, to connect, to unite, and that's about the body, the mind, and the spirit. But if we look at this kind of concept from an Aboriginal perspective, we would look at more so connecting the body, the earth, and then the spirit is like many different meanings in Aboriginal culture. Almost like, I guess, what Brendan was sharing, how he was talking about the stomach and the heart and the mind. So within all of that, we've also got the ego, which could be like the left side of our brain, which is like our fight or flight, which brings on the cortisol, which is where our modern day society lives, on that side of the brain. That imbalance that we have can take us away from our spirituality. And so I think it's really beautiful, to lean into Aboriginal culture and the healing that can bring. Even when you just take away, I think I was talking to you about this before, Kizzy, but when we take away the word time, from vocabulary and we take away the word possession. So in Aboriginal language, there's no such word for this, for time and possession. And then when we take those two aspects away from our modern day world, which maybe we've come to experience during this time when we've all been told to stay home like naughty children, and then time and possessions kind of left us, and we had a lot more space so that we could like ponder and perhaps delve a little bit more into our spirituality, and with that bring about healing. And so for me, I feel like they're intertwined and very much linked together. So that's just from my perspective, from my experience that I've had in the time that I've been here. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I've got to go soon, but be here for a few more minutes.
Yeah, look, for me to answer that question about spirituality, I'm a very spiritual person for many different reasons. I've had some amazing experiences, and I just want to share one of those experiences years and years ago before my father passed away. He took me back to my country, he took me to a sacred place, and we went to this sacred place and he stayed in the car, and I said, look, I need to go down and walk around where my ancestors are and walk on the footsteps of my people. And he couldn't walk around too much, so he stayed in the car, and I went down into a place called Gunawirra, and the river that flows through Gunawirra is the Bogan River. And I walked down there, and this is no word of a lie. I walked down there and I could hear children's voices. So I kept walking around, and there was just this energy or this feeling, this amazing feeling around me, this calmness, and just an amazing feeling. I'm walking around, and I felt like there was a playground nearby. And so I kept walking around, and I'd become very curious where these children's voices were. So I went up to the top of the bank of the river, no houses, no children, nothing around. And I started to scratch my head a little bit and thinking, wow, this is, what does all this mean? And I walked around for around an hour, and all the time I was there, there was these children's voices. And I walked back to my dad, who was sitting in the car, and he had this cheeky grin on his face. And before I even said something, he said, "Did you hear them?" And I went, "Wow," And he said, "That's where your people are, and it's where he and his mother and her mother and that lived." And it was an amazing experience. And when we talk about, for me, spirituality, it's part of my blood, it's part of who I am, it's the journey that I'm taking, it's right here, right now. And having all my brothers and sisters right with me now, we all come from different places, but how we've all come together here, and Eve here, my Wiradjuri sister, we've been talking over the last few months about her family and where we come from, and it looks as though that we're connected in a family way. Her grandmother, my grandmother were Parkers, and so there's this connection. But how we all come together, and even all you guys, how we're all together right now. There's to me, and many people think differently, but there's this spiritual thing that's around us that's bringing us all together. And that experience that I went through lives with me every day. And look, I think about it a lot, and it makes me forget about all the nasty stuff that's around me. And look, I'm like a lot of people as a child. I went through racism, I went through discrimination, I went through being bullied, trying to understand who I was. I had a non-Aboriginal mother, I had an Aboriginal father. You know, I spent many years trying to work out who I was, and where I should be. And as I got older, that spirituality has fixed up my mind and made me who I am, and shaped me into who I am. And then I started doing art, and always loved art, always loved painting, always loved colour. And I thought, I could never do that. You know, artists are these amazing creative people. You know, but I was taught at school that to be an artist, you've got to have, you know, a portrait of a person, you've got to be very creative, you've got to be a genius. I'm certainly not a genius, but I love art, and I love sharing my culture, and I love sharing the spiritual moments that I have. And I paint a lot about my Aboriginal grandmother, who was a healer, who was a medicine woman, healed her own people and stuff. And so I paint about natural plants that she would have used as part of medicines and eating and healing. So, like I said, there's this spiritual connection that I have through art that connects me to my land, to my people, to my culture. I feel very blessed that I'm able to have that, and that's my healing. Look, I have lots of other stories and experiences I've gone through. So, yeah, the question about the spiritual world, I paint about the spiritual world, and I know it's around me, and it's guiding me, it's protecting me, you know. And I have this really strong connection to the stars and the moon, and I paint a lot about it. And I the very first artwork I did, I painted about that, and someone said to me, "Why are you painting about that?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I'm just drawn to paint about it." And I got to think about it. You know, I love the notion that our people, my ancestors, gazing up at the stars at night and the moon, and sharing stories around that fire, and learning and watching stars, and they're like reference points. They make us travel to where we need to be for certain foods and to be in a certain place. And it's about following that continuum, you know, that continuation of our culture and how our people moved around, and having that connection of knowing, going to sacred places like I talked about, is where then the spirit of the land and the spirit of our people are. And I'm sure that we all got very spiritual places that we go to, and we become more connected to ourselves. And, you know, I love going to the beach, and I love going to the ocean, and how calm is that? You know, you can be, you know, got the, you know, when you go there, you become in a different space. You know? So, yeah, look, spirituality for our people is always there. To me, it makes up every second of my life. And whether I'm doing art or just walking around doing what I'm doing, with the thoughts and the feelings that I have, that comes from that. Because being an Aboriginal person, yes, I have non-Aboriginal blood as well, but, you know, I feel that that's who I am. And like I said, when I was a child, I had to work out who I was and where I was going. And I love my non-Aboriginal mother, but I love my non-Aboriginal family. But, you know, I'm not saying that one's greater than the other. It's just that I feel more connected as an Aboriginal person. And it's that amazing feeling I have when I'm simply going into a park and I touch the trees and the plants. And, you know, I go out to our garden there every day, and I've got to be around that. I've got to feel that power and that energy that it provides me, that healing. So I hope that answered that question for you as from me. But any of you guys want to offer something?
Yeah, speaking from like a Torres perspective, like what these guys were saying, like Eve and Graham, it's the same with us. I mean, we have like that spiritual connection because, I mean, we're guided by the stars, which is we call Tago. So, I mean, that's my ancestors to the stars. So that comes to like explaining about that, the Torres Strait flag. I mean, everybody around Australia sees the Torres Strait flag but doesn't know what they mean. So the green represents the land, the blue represents the water, the black represents the people, and in the middle you see like a star. I mean, you guys call it Southern Cross. We call it like a tagai, which is our elder, that's our guide, that guides us through our seafaring journeys. The other part that you see is what we call a dari, D-H-A-R-I. It's worn by men in a ceremony, and only men are allowed to wear it. So you'll see it as a headdress, which is like on the front of the forehead of the men. So when they're doing certain dances, they'll wear like the dari. So that way it's only worn by the men. But coming back to the spirituality for us, it's like when you feel you're going to a place, you're belonging to somewhere. You'll feel, if you have that urge, like you go somewhere when you want to go camping, or if you're going around the place, you always want to go back to that place. That means you are connected to that place and you're belonging to that area as well. So up in the islands, it's the same process. Where I've grown up is the middle part. If you've heard of, the native title, Mabo. So my family comes next door to all that, which is the central part. So like referring to my totem, turtle is my sea turtle, and then my Eve's just leaving. And then my land totem is the hibiscus. So that's where I'm from, on that part there. So our spiritual connection is that you actually belong to a place. If you feel that energy when you're actually going there as well. So that's your journey, that you actually need to go back to that place for your self-healing as well. I mean, if I go too far away from salt water, I mean, I miss it. So I'm a saltwater person, but I'm still a land person on my dad's side. Like growing up in the Redfern area, I mean, everybody has different interpretations of that. So I've grown up from knee-high to grass up there. So you know where the cauliflower pub is? I've grown up before those towers were built. Down in Lawson Street, where those big high rises are going up now, I've grown up around that area. So I'm still connected from that place there. And I mean, I love the place still, but when you walk down there, it's a different atmosphere that you get. So to me, going through all that area there, when we're walking back on country, you feel connected and you get it's like a battery, you get regenerated as well. So to me, having that, you feel comfortable because you know you're back on where you belong, and you can smell the different smells that come with it as well. And then when we're doing some, like if you're going out, when we for places, you can actually, like, you know that you belong in those places as well. And then when you're going home, you go back to where you belong as well. So to me, it's like when I go from Sydney to recharge my battery at home to the Torres Strait, well, I can't go this year, but to go home, I mean, I've got to fly lots of planes, no, 3 planes to go home. So just to go to the islands up home and just to, you can walk around on a beach up home, nobody around, and then just relax because you're back on your own country. Well, we don't call it, island people don't call it country, they call it the islands. So yeah, island time, well, we don't go by clocks and watches up there. So yeah, when you're there, you just recuperate. So when you're enjoying yourself on country or on the islands, that's when you relax and you belong to those places as well.
I'll just quickly share a little story about spirituality. As a stolen generation person and never found family till 6-7 years ago, once I found family, I started going on this journey. And it started, the first thing that happened was I can clearly remember the day where I stopped. I was walking through Newtown and I stopped and I looked up to the sky and I knew my mother had passed away. And 3 years later, I knew that day. I looked up, I said, Mum's gone. And I never got to meet her. I found her grave, but I never got to meet her. So I knew that I was never going to meet her. All these little things that popped up. The most recent one was 8 months ago. I received a phone call from this organisation, Link Up, and they said, "Oh, we've just found a cousin of yours." And I said, "Oh yeah, where is he?" And they said, "He's in Mount Druitt." And I worked in Mount Druitt, and so it happened really quickly. I ended up meeting him for the first time, and he had never met any family at all. mid-50s, chronic health and disease. I was the first family member he'd ever met. Out of that meeting, I was given a family tree, and in that family tree it had my grandmother, and it had born and where she died. And I looked at it and it said deceased in Katoomba. And I live in Springwood, so I'm about 20 minutes from Katoomba. Now, the strange thing is, my mother was 5 years of age when she was removed from my grandmother. And they never saw her again. All of a sudden, I've met a first cousin who had this piece of paper that said that my grandmother was buried in Katoomba. I went up the very next day to the cemetery at Katoomba. I couldn't find her. A lot of unmarked graves. On my way back, I thought, stuff this, I'll ring the council. And I rang the council, and luckily there were 3 graves before my grandmother's which were marked. So he gave me the names of the 3 people before my grandmother, and he said, your grandmother's after this one. So I turned around, I did the illegal U-turn at the set of lights. I turned around, went straight back up to the cemetery, found the name, and bang, I found my grandmother. None of the rest of the family know where she is and had never seen her again. And it just so happened that she's 20 minutes from where I live. Now, the rest of that, the follow-on effect from that is that my children now know where Nan is, and Nan's not lost anymore. All because of this meeting. And all my family come from Lake Victoria, Lake Mungo. We're Barkindji people, we're Darling River people. So what was Nan doing up in the mountains? And I've got the matriarch buried 20 minutes from where I live, and I've since made a cross for her. I put it in there, and I now take my children there every fortnight at least to go and sit down and talk to Nan. And I can feel Nan in there. Every time I leave, and my little ones run amok in that cemetery, and I can feel all the old people in there having a ball, letting my kids run. Oh, this is great, we love this. And every time I leave, I can hear Nan saying, oh, don't go, don't go, don't go. But now she's that, there's those little stories that have happened in, I suppose, everyone's life, these little stories happen. But it's taking the blindfolds off and being open to them. And taking that time to slow down and recognise what's going on. And using the 3 brains. Aboriginal people have sat in the silence for 250,000 years. We've sat here on country for 250,000 years with no distraction. We listen to the birds, we listen to the animals, we know the language of everything that's on country. Even the winds, we know the language of the winds. When the rain's coming, fire. We didn't just burn to keep the bush down. We burnt for rain as well. You'll notice when we have a big drought in Australia, well, you think about it. When's the last time we have a big fire? We burn for rain and water. The last big fires we had, the big one we had up in the mountains here last year, it rained for almost a week after those fires. So it's that connection and that spirituality that we can't explain it. You can't give an explanation of that spirituality. It's knowing your country. It's having thousands and thousands and thousands of generations walking on that country, knowing the smells, knowing the sounds, knowing everything. It's that is what I would say is spirituality, is knowing your surroundings, knowing who you are and having that connection. Get your shoes off every now and then and walk around barefoot. I recommend Take that time out, your self-care. My self-care, I get out in the bush. I get out in the bush barefoot. Or I've got a fire pit. I make a fire pit every night. I get the fire pit and I sit down and I play my Yidaki and let the kids run around, and they don't pay any attention to what I'm doing, which frustrates me a little bit. But those songs, they're listening anyway. Subconsciously, they're listening to the culture. But that's all it is. Get your shoes off, get grounded, get barefoot, touch the ground with your barefoot. The earth, when the earth revolves, the earth hums. It sends out a frequency. You walk around on here with your shoes on all the time, you're not going to feel that. So that's just a little definition of, my definition of spirituality. I also, after I first found my family, I went and got a tattoo. I've got a few tattoos. And I went and got a tattoo of a tree with a sunset, and it's got a few crows on it. And the crow is my totem. And I was walking down Newtown one day, and a lady walked up to me and she said, "Oh, I love that tattoo. Is that the tree from Lake Mungo?" And I'd only just found out where my family was from, and I didn't know that we had that connection to Lake Mungo. So I raced home straight away and typed it up on Google and looking at Lake Mungo. And sure enough, there's a picture of a tree with the crows on it with the sunset that I've got tattooed on my arm, and that's my mother's country, and I'd never been there. So it's just those little things, just taking the time out to slow down. Take the time out, slow down, smell, listen, and feel and ground yourself.
Yeah, and look, I'm sure all you guys tuning in right now have had experiences, strange experiences, whether they're spiritual or whether they're unexplained. It's what we believe those signals mean to us. And I know years and years ago we had a family pet, and the pet passed away, and you know, I could feel that my pet cat was always brushing up on my legs. And you know, for weeks and weeks, months, I could feel my cat brushing up there even though she had passed away, you know. So whether I'm crazy, I don't know, but it's about what we choose to believe in. And coming back to that identity, once again, we touched on in the beginning, so important for our people, because the spirituality is connected to our identity and to where we come from. You know, so country, identity, there's so many aspects that are connected to it, you know, and certainly spirituality is one of those things. So, like I said, it's what we choose to believe in, and for our people, we choose to believe, or I choose to believe, that the spirit of my people and my ancestors and the land travels with me no matter where I go. And like just going into the bush or going into a park and you know, touching things and wanting to have that feeling and that spiritual feeling around me is what I choose to do, and it helps me get through my life, you know. So I'm sure all of you have something that helps with healing or helps with pain or fear and all those sorts of things, you know. So yeah, so look, we've got about 15 minutes to go. Brendan is a master in Yidaki. I'll let him explain a little bit about Yidaki. Is there a question? Okay. Can healing power actually cure illness? Although recently I was seeing over in a remote community, I think in Western Australia, about a hospital over there bringing in Aboriginal healers, elders that have great power, healing power into a hospital. And I know, look, I'm sure all of us at times have knocked our leg on the table or, you know, hurt ourselves in some way, and we fight it in our mind. You know, I'm not feeling pain. I'm not feeling pain. You know what I mean? And a lot of time it's mind over matter. But I know that this hospital over in South Australia, wherever it is bringing in elders who have gifts as healers into, and I think it's the cancer section, and giving people hope and a belief in trying to get through their illness using traditional spiritual practices in which these Aboriginal elders use. And look, there's a great book out there, and someone has asked about resources. There is a great book. It's very hard to get older, but it's called Men of High Degree, and it's about men from Central Australia who practice healing. They're like sorcerers. They have amazing talents and skills and power and energy in healing. So once again, in what we choose to believe in, people believe in UFOs and aliens, and we're not the only people in the universe, you know. So for me, yes, I know that Aboriginal people have always been healing themselves. They've got to have skills and practices that does that, you know. And like I talked about my grandmother, she was a healer. And one quick story about her, she used to use natural herbs and plants from her country, and in the period when there was what was that disease? Yeah. Well, there's been diseases come and go in little country areas, and she basically, one of her practices was burying, to fight off a fever, was burying people up to their head in the earth and feeding them natural plants and things. And there's lots of occasions my father told me about her doing those things with her own people, but also the wider community as well, and fighting off that fever and healing people that way. So, yeah, look, we've got 10 minutes or so. This great man's going to talk a little bit and play a little bit about the Yidaki. And yeah, it's over to you, sir. Last question. Oh, sorry, there's just one more question.
No. And just with like the Torres Strait part as well, like reinforcing what Brendan and Graham are saying, it's you have traditional healers around Australia, and we actually use them in I work in medicine, and we work with our traditional healers. So in South Australia, you have what you call the Ngakri men and Ngakri women. So they're traditional healers. In the Torres Strait Island, we have traditional healers. I've grown up with both the traditional healers, and I still use them today. I prefer to go to my own family because, I mean, you're actually connected to country, and you're actually connected to the Earth, Mother Earth. So to go back home and to use stuff, and even on anywhere around Australia, you're actually still connected. So to use healing is like a process where we still practice traditional medicine, whether it's like the spiritual, or whether, like what Graham and Brendan was saying before, you actually are using plants to heal that person as well, and even like salt water. So on the island side, we use a lot of like salt water and land. So using that, it's just saying we still practice medicine today, and we still use that in harmony with both modern medicine and traditional medicine as well. So it's still practiced out there as well, and not just the word spiritual. I mean, that can be anything, and like healing powers. I mean, healing is like, it's what you believe in and how you've grown up with as well.
Just to answer your question quietly, yes, we can do that for you.
That's right.
Okay, ready?
So over to the master.
Sorry, just readjust it.
The story means you won't do it again. All right, I'll explain very quickly this instrument. A lot of you may know it as a didgeridoo. It's not a didgeridoo. It's called a Yidaki. And the difference between a Yidaki and a didgeridoo is a Yidaki is played traditionally. A didgeridoo is a Yidaki that's not played traditionally. So Yidaki, white fellas have got no idea of traditional song. And so when I say traditional song, and I mentioned it earlier, every living thing has a song. It has a meaning. And so Yidaki means voice in my father's language. And when I play Yidaki, I sing through it. So if I do a kangaroo dance, I play kangaroo song. If we do an emu dance, we play emu song. A lot of didgeridoo players, they play their own rhythms. So they're not playing traditional song. And I'll give an example. Some of you may have heard didgeridoo. If I was to sing didgeridoo, 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 the song sounds like this. Everyone hear that? Could everyone hear that?
Guys?
Yep. So if I change that song, and if I sing, did more, did more, did more, did more, did more, the song sounds like this. There's two different songs, but there's lots of songs. That's the difference between a Yidaki and a didgeridoo. So what I do a lot of smoking ceremonies down here in Sydney, and a smoking ceremony is not just about picking a gum leaf off a tree and burning it. Smoking ceremony is a ceremony, and there's a process that I go through when I do that ceremony. So before I even pick the leaf from the tree, I sing a song to the tree, and that song goes into the leaf, and then I pick the leaf, and then when I burn the leaf, that releases the song. That's the smoking ceremony. It's not about picking any leaf off a tree. There are so many species of gum tree and eucalyptus in Australia. I only use a certain type, and different blackfellas from different areas, they would have their own type, I suppose. But again, that lack of knowledge there's a lot of blackfellas out there that are doing these ceremonies that have got no idea of what they're doing. And things can go pear-shaped for these fellas that are doing it. You need to do that ceremony properly. So when I do smoking ceremonies, I play a healing song on the Yidaki, and this is what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to finish off with the healing and cleansing song on the Yidaki. So you're welcome. I invite you just to sit back, put both your feet on the floor, close your eyes, and enjoy the smooth sound of the Yidaki. Yeah. And you're aware that women shouldn't play the Yidaki. There's a whole lot of big controversy around why women shouldn't play. Women shouldn't play for two reasons. The first one is that Yidaki, there are three types of Yidaki. There was a shorter one called a mogo. And that's the first Yidaki that come out, was the mogo. The second one is the Yidaki about this size. And then there's another one that's about 6 foot, 6.5 foot. That's called Bay Warren. Warren is only used for really special ceremonies, the big one. Normal Yidaki and the smaller one, again, you won't see too much of the smaller one, but around this size, used for both ceremony and, you know, sitting around having a jam, playing songs, dancing. The first reason why women shouldn't play is the story with Yidaki is it's a phallic symbol. The second reason why women shouldn't play is because of the breathing. So when I play Yidaki, I'm using my back muscles, my chest muscles, my stomach muscles, and I'm sitting here with some rhythms and I'm going, and that can be the breathing. It is said that that breathing, because men and women are built differently inside, the breathing of the Yidaki can destroy the egg. And if women are pregnant, they can bring on a miscarriage and an early birth. So I'm breathing very similar to a contraction, but minus the pain. So that's the second reason why women shouldn't play. It's very controversial. Look, I've got a 4-year-old daughter. Whatever chance she gets, she's trying to grab hold of the Yidakis and plays on it. And I know that when I'm dead and buried, she's going to be straight onto it. And it's going to cause me a lot of grief after I'm dead and buried. But I always say, and my belief is that women shouldn't play. But then again, what you choose to do behind closed doors is up to you. But be wary, because I've actually seen a Canadian backpacker play the didgeridoo at Circular Quay, and that just by chance was a group of men from Arnhem Land that were down in Sydney at an art exhibition, and the old fella walked straight up to the end of the Yidaki and he kicked it while she was playing it, because they shouldn't be playing. So I'm going to just finish off, as I said, with the healing and cleansing song on the Yidaki. Just sit back again and just enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you. Graham's had a really interpretive dance on everything we've just spoken about.
Look, I hope you felt that. I know sitting right here next to Brendan, I felt this real calmness, and yeah, I could have just drifted off, you know. So, look, it's a great way to finish the webinar. Look, can't thank you all enough for taking the time to tune into us and to learn. And I hope that we've shared something that you can walk away with and practice or share in your workplace or with your family, your friends, your community, where you come from. We promise to do much, much more. This is just the beginning for us, but we do want to, we do live on the feedback that you people will provide in our future webinars. And look, we'll be in touch soon as to when our next webinar will be. In between now and our webinar, there will be an introduction to Gunawirra webinar, okay? And that'll just be an hour about learning about Gunawirra, learning about our programs, learning about where we work. And I know them aunties up in Gallagher, your ears will be burning during that session, because we'll be talking about the communities we work in and the people that's connected to us. It's a great story like I talked about before. I can see some new faces there right now that hopefully become part of Gunawirra's future and our family. And look, we just doing some amazing stuff here, and we'll share that in a couple of weeks' time. Katrina will be in touch with sending those details through. So yeah, she's hiding over on the side there. There she is. So look, if any of you guys need anything, any questions or anything at any time, we're available. Yes, we're a service provider for many people, and we can become a provider for you guys, you know. So it's all about everyone being united, coming together and learning and helping each other. And yeah, look, just can't thank you enough. Please put your hands together for these guys that have been part of the webinar. And yeah, look, for now, stay safe and well. Terrible what's going on around us, making life very difficult for us all, but at least we can stay connected. We can still share our culture this way. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.